I'm Beth, and I'm here today for the video tutorial for the Sandy shorts. I'm so excited. We've got some PinTucks on the front, some pockets on the back. There's two options for the waistband. There's two options for the hem. Okay, how did you print out your pattern or project your pattern? If you print it at home, first trim the borders, then tape together the pieces, then cut out the pieces, and then we're ready to go. Okay, I'm breaking a tutorial rule here, and I'm using a fabric that looks exactly the same on the front and the back. So sometimes that makes it challenging visually, but we're going to take a minute and mark our front and our back so we won't get confused. All right, let's cut it. All right, I am going to trace this out and cut it with my scissors today. My rotary cutter fell to the floor a few weeks ago. So anyway, this works fine. I've got fabric folded right sides together. I'm starting here with the back piece. I always like to start with the largest pattern piece. Cut that first. And then next I'll cut the front piece, and we'll transfer the markings a little bit later. Onto the waistband, so be sure you've got the view A or view B for the waistband that you want to sew. View A has the ruffle at the top. View B is more of a standard waistband. For the back pockets, you can choose to do one pocket on the back. You can do both pockets on the back, no pockets on the back. You can add side seam pockets if you'd prefer to do a side seam pocket, leave off the back, up to you. Okay, now let's take a minute and clearly mark the wrong side of your fabric. Mark on the wrong side of all pieces. Okay. We are going to transfer our pin tuck lines onto the right side of the fabric on both front pieces. So lay the pattern piece down on one side and make a small mark at the top of each line and then a small mark at the bottom of each line. Going to the other piece, now lay the pattern piece face down, and I can see through my paper, but do the same thing. Make a dot at the top of each line and at the bottom. And then we're going to connect. Just use a ruler and connect dot to dot, both sides. Okay, now to sew these, just take each line one by one. You're going to make a crease along each line. Sometimes if I've got a cotton, I'll kind of run it along the desk. And sew that at 1 centimeter, top to bottom. And of course, back stitch at the top, back stitch at the bottom. And then continue on. Just repeat that same process. Move on to the next line. You'll have enough space from the one that you've just done, and continue to fold each line and sew down at 1 centimeter. So we've got 5 folds on each panel. So once you've got both panels complete, we'll get them pressed. Okay, so to press the tucks, I start with no steam, and you can see here I'm pulling the fabric a little bit so that as I'm applying the heat, the spacing lays flat and even all the way from the bottom to the top. Once you feel good about them laying flat, go ahead and switch to steam, and this will give them a final set. My iron is spraying a little bit lately. But you can see here that the steam is really going to set in the folds nicely. Let's do a stay stitch. We're going to do it 1/8 of an inch from the edge at the hem and at the waist, so the top and the bottom of the tucks. It's best to sew in the direction that the folds are going. So that means either at the waist or the hem, you will sew with the folds facing down. You can see here I've got them face up, but then as I switch to the other side, just go face down so that your foot is going forward over the folds. Now we're just going to clean up the top and the bottom a little bit, really just cutting off about 1/16 of an inch. We don't want to change the shape here at all. There is a bit of an angle at the hem, but just taking off any folds that are hanging excess past that edge. Okay, let's do the back pockets now. So lay the pattern piece down with the right side of the fabric up. Make a dot at each pocket mark. Let's iron down a 1/4 inch at the top of the pocket, so you're going wrong side to wrong side. Then fold in again 5/8 of an inch and press. And edge stitch that closed. And now let's fold in the rest of the pocket seam allowance. I like to start at the bottom. You're going up 1/2 inch and creating a point there in the middle. And then 1/2 inch on each side. Okay, and now pin the back pockets to the back pieces. I like to pin the pocket, as you can see, kind of in the middle, so I can sew around it without hitting the pins. So take your time here, pivot at the corners. You want to be just a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I've mostly been doing a single stitch to attach these pockets, but if you want to do a double stitch here or a decorative stitch, you have plenty of options. Now let's sew the front rise. With the right sides of the fabric together, pin the 2 pieces of the front and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And now let's pin the back rise. Fabric right sides together, sew at 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. Now trim both seam allowances down to 1/4 of an inch, and we are going to use this overlocking foot to do our finishing stitch. If you are using a serger to finish your edges, then you know what to do. Go ahead and finish seams, but if you're using your home machine, there's some more details about this foot in the tech pack, but it's very useful when you're doing your zigzag on your home machine because the bar in the middle will hold the fabric down in place. My machine came with this foot, so check your machine, and I have noticed that they are not always labeled E. That's just particular for my machine, but that's not standard. So notice this image and you want to find a foot that looks like this one. It's very helpful. Okay, well I just finished the seams, but I didn't press record. So here's the seam finished. We'll watch it on the next one, but I've got both the front and back rises stitched and finished. Let's go on to the inseam. So when you line up your edges, line up that center seam, and we're going to sew this with 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. Trim that down to 1/4 of an inch and switch out the foot. There's a lot of switching from your universal foot to the zigzag foot. Be careful with that. And then here is that nice finished seam. Okay, let's go to the side seams now. So line up the side seams, pin those, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sew the straight stitch, and then we'll follow up and finish with the overlock foot. Let's go on to the waistband. So let's pin right sides together, the short ends, and sew those with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Press both of those seams open. Now fold the waistband wrong sides together. And let's go right sides together. You're going to match up the raw edge at the top. Start with the side seams. And then we're going to continue and pin around the waistband. I like to go to the center front next and then somewhere around the pin tucks on each side of the front panels. On the back side, also get a pin at the center back, and then at least one above each of the pockets. And you can pin around the waistband as much as makes you feel comfortable. I like to take the toolbox off for the waistband and for hems. Remember to leave the gap at center back, so I'm starting here a little past the center back and I'm going to make my way all the way around at 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then as you're coming around to the back, just stop, do a back stitch, and we will insert the elastic. Okay, if you are sewing waistband A with the ruffle, start at the stitch that we just sewed, and you're going to mark up 5/8 of an inch all the way around the waistband, no gap, just sew a solid stitch all the way around so that you can insert the 1/2 inch elastic. If you are going to sew waistband B, then you're going to go up from the top down just 1/8 of an inch, even a little less than 1/8 of an inch, and that will give you the channel for the 1 inch elastic. So I'm doing view B today, so I'm up at the very top, sewing all the way around. Now we are ready to insert the elastic. Attach a safety pin, and then going in through the center back, you're just going to feed the elastic all the way through the waistband. Okay, and then we're going to get this ready to sew together, removing that safety pin. Make sure there are no twists or folds in your elastic within the waistband. And then we're going to sew it together, cross it over about 1/2 of an inch, sew with a zigzag stitch. And once that's done, now we can close up this 2 inch gap at the center back. Now let's trim that 1/2 inch seam allowance down to 1/4 of an inch. And let's finish this edge with our overlocking foot. And then let's iron the waistband a little bit. You're going to gently kind of pull at the elastic. We just want to get that finished seam pressed down towards the shorts. All right, and then our last step is the hem. So 2 options for the hem. So first, roll up 1/4 of an inch. Get that pressed all the way around both legs. And then you can choose to either fold it up 1 inch. I originally designed it with a 1 inch hem, but a lot of the testers only went up a 1/2 an inch here, and it looks great. So doing that 1/2 an inch will add a little bit of length. So whichever you choose to finish the hem, we're going to sew with the wrong side out, edge stitch all the way around each leg. And that is it. That is it, y'all. You've got sandy shorts. So this is what they look like right off the machine. A lot of pressing, pretty stiff, but after a wash, they really rumple up and they're so lovely. So I hope you enjoy your sandy shorts. Please post and tag if you get a pair made. And the sandy shirt is coming in a few weeks. So thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.